Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. So I'm guessing you're new here if you're watching this video, or you might be a returning subscriber showing your family this video. So this video is particularly for family and friends and supporters and carers who don't have an eating disorder, to help educate them about eating disorders and help them educate them about All In and how to support a sufferer with eating disorder. And I basically decided to do this video because a lot of people come to me and a lot of people ask me that, you know, how do I tell my family that I have an eating disorder? Or how do I explain to my family that I want this much food and stuff like this? And it is really hard because people who don't have an eating disorder don't see food the same way we do. Because food to us is, you know, our entire life kind of revolves around it when you have an eating disorder. Whereas food to them is something like oxygen. It's just something that they have and they do and they survive. It's not as if they think twice about doing it. It's like going to the toilet for them. Whereas eating to us, our entire lives revolves around it. We go to bed thinking about it. We wake up in the morning thinking about it. And we spend the entire day, you know, thinking about food. And obviously that is not normal. And that is what recovery tries to break and fix. And you probably might be wondering, parents, friends, or carers, why should I listen to you? You know what I mean? You seem very young. And I have an answer to that. I myself had an eating disorder, and yes, I am pretty much 99.9% recovered from that eating disorder, but I have pretty much went through about 4 years of suffering with an eating disorder, and only last year did I decide to go all in and actually start to recover. So I've had first-hand experience of having an eating disorder, and I have worked my very hardest to try and help support others with eating disorders. So I've heard lots of other people's perspectives and lots of other people's stories, and I've also read a lot of doctors' information. I also used to have a team myself of eating disorder carers and stuff that just didn't help me whatsoever, so I discharged myself because, you know, sometimes medical teams and medical professionals aren't always right, and sometimes that parents and carers have to have faith in themselves that we can do this, and the sufferer needs to have faith in themselves that they can recover, because at the end of the day, no one can make your child recover. It is pretty much down to them whether or not they want to recover fully. Yes, you can try and force feed them, and yes, you can sit hours on end waiting them to finish a meal and stuff, but at the end of the day, it is down to that child whether or not they fully recover. Yes, you can restore weight, which may help because it might wake up, you know, the neural pathways and things, and it might help rewire the brain. It's a lot easier if your child hasn't had anorexia for that long, and it's quite harder if it's a long-term kind of thing. Just because the neural pathways are rewired and they can't be easily rewired, and it also depends on how young your child is. So it's a lot easier if your child is younger and a lot harder if your child or friend or whatever is a lot older. But that doesn't mean that it's not possible. It is 100% possible for anyone to recover. At the end of the day though, it is still down to that child, and you can only help them. And I hope this video helps you to understand what All In Recovery is, and, you know, what your bit in All In Recovery is, and what we as eating disorder sufferers want you to know. So I'm going to separate this part into 3 sections, and I will leave timestamps in the description below in case you just want to skip some parts or whatever, say your child's already explained what All In is to you and stuff. But I recommend you watch this entire video because I will also add little core information and facts throughout this video. So like I just want to say before, I'm not a medical professional, but I've also had, you know, a lot of medical research that I've did. I've read so many first-hand experiences as well as my own first-hand experiences of eating disorders. So I would say I'm educated enough to give this information out. And yeah, so the first part will be explanation, the second part will be your bit, and the third part of what we want you to know. And like I mentioned, all timestamps will be in the description below. So let's begin. So this video is kind of a hard video to make because of the fact that every eating disorder sufferer is different. Every parent or friend or carer or supporter is different, and I can't pretty much, you know, say what your parent or how you're feeling right now. It's really hard for me to do that because everyone is different. And I just want to say though, if you're watching this with Christopher, then this is your perfect opportunity. If I finish a section and you don't feel as if I've said something, then please voice your opinion and your say in it, because this is a perfect opportunity for you to say that and to not stay silent, because like I mentioned, I can't cover everything in this video. I will try my very hardest, but at the end of the day, you are the one that is suffering with this illness, and I just feel like you need to voice it. And the same goes for you, supporter, that if you feel like you need to voice something to your child, or you know, even if they might be like your friend or whatever, then please do that, because you know, it works both ways. Like, it's kind of like a bridge, and you need to just like have two sides in this battle, because at the end of the day, it's how many supporters you have against this one eating disorder. So just remember that. So let's begin with the first part, which is the explanation part. So what is All In? Where did it come from? What do you do? And who invented it, pretty much? So first of all In recovery method was actually created by Stephanie Buttermore, but Stephanie Buttermore did not have an eating disorder. So then I went ahead and I took a twist on All In Recovery by Stephanie and changed it into an anorexia recovery method, doing different kind of guidelines to assure that it suits an anorexic sufferer, because obviously there are things that come in with All In Recovery, such as refeeding syndrome and things that you have to watch out for, but I'll go into that later on. So Stephanie has a PhD in like medical and things like that, so she is pretty much educated on this matter, and she is like a medical professional for this kind of thing. And the reason she did that was because she was in a calorie deficit, and this was off not eating disorder related reasons. This was mainly because she was doing a lot of training for shows and things, because she was a fitness kind of influencer kind of thing, and she decided that she just wanted to be free of thinking about food all the time. She was having food obsessive thoughts. She had extreme hunger, because you know, people without eating disorders can actually suffer that. If you don't know what extreme hunger is, I will go into that in the second part as well. So I just want to mention that like Stephanie did not have an eating disorder, so it's not great to go off Stephanie, and Stephanie did a different thing. My best advice of who to look for you know, All In Recovery method is either my previous videos or Tabitha Farrer. So Tabitha Farrer is a woman who has struggled with an eating disorder for pretty much half of her life, and she's now fully recovered, 100% recovered, and she makes YouTube videos. I will also leave a link in the description below, and parents and sufferers, please go ahead and check out that video, because it is so important. Like, all those videos on her channel have helped me so much. She was my main light bulb moment that I have, because I feel like every eating disorder sufferer has this moment where they're just like, enough is enough. Not everyone, but some people have a point where they're just sick of the eating disorder so much that they're just like, this has to stop now, and they start to actually want to start to recover again. Obviously, like I mentioned, that's not for everyone, but fingers crossed that will happen to your child or friend or whoever it is you're supporting. So All In Recovery is basically eating however much you want, whenever you want, with minimums. So I know your first instant reaction was like, oh my god, my child cannot do that, because you know what I mean, if I just let her eat whatever they want to eat, they will literally just eat like nothing. Do you know what I mean? And that's not simply the case. There are minimums in place of free meals and free snacks, so you must assure that your child, and you the sufferer yourself, must assure that you eat those minimums of free meals and free snacks. But when I say this is a minimum, absolute minimum, definitely not a maximum cap on anything, because you know, the inner thing in recovery, there is no such thing as too much food. Your child in the beginning may be so hungry that they might not even have any hunger signals, because their body is so damaged that it can't even send regular hunger signals, because your body has got to a point where it's kind of gave up, and it's just like, well, what's the point sending hunger signals? I need to use this energy that I do have from like anything I can get to function my heart and my organs. So you might not have hunger cues straight away, but over time, the more the child eats, then they will start to get hunger signals through back. And this might go from having no hunger signals whatsoever to hungry all the time and want food all the time. Yes, they may not voice this, so please encourage them to eat more constantly, because they may not want to voice that, because that eating disorder voice might be so loud, but they might be hungry all the time. And if your child is thinking about food all the time, obsessing about food all the time, doing things like scrolling through the Instagram feed, looking at food, talking about food all the time, watching cook shows, reading cookbooks, going to the shop, staring at food but not buying anything, preparing food like baking or cooking and not eating the food, then these are all signs that your child is mentally hungry. And 9 times out of 10, the child might not have physical hunger cues, but they may have mental hunger cues, and your child may be trying to ignore those mental hunger cues because you don't believe that they are normal hunger. And when your body has been in a calorie deficit, this is 100% normal, and you must encourage your child to eat those mental hunger cues as well. And I really hope that you really, you don't get mad at them for eating loads of food and things. I hope you don't, comment on how much they're eating. Just say like, well done, or even so, just ignore that they're doing that. But like, 9 times out of 10, the child does actually really like that encouragement of how proud you are of them and things. So that's always great. But then also your eating disorder can twist that to be like, oh, see, she's noticing how much food you're eating and blah, 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 blah. So sometimes at the end of the day, depending on the person, this is your perfect opportunity to tell you what you like personally. Do you like comments saying well done, or would you prefer them not to mention anything whatsoever? It's your perfect time to say that right now. So obviously this is normal, and this is proved by the Minnesota starvation experiment. And this was basically an experiment that they did a long time ago, and they put a group of men inside of like a facility kind of thing, and they didn't eat, or they ate like in a calorie deficit for a certain amount of days. And then when they came out, they monitored like how much food they ate, and they did things like they tried to do it on a small amount and then let people eat however much they wanted and things like that. The men didn't have an eating disorder. This was all just a test to see the effects of starvation. I'll also leave a link in the description below of where you can read that experiment. I recommend you supporters to actually go ahead and read that because it is so helpful to understand what goes on in your child's brain. So basically, at the end of the day, what happened was that they obviously came out, and some even became chefs at the end of the experiment because they became so obsessed with food, and like their life just evolved around food. So they decided to create a career out of it. Some obviously came out extremely hungry, and they ate over 11,000 calories for like a week straight. And I just want to say this, that your child might go through a period called extreme hunger. Extreme hunger is where the body is basically wanting a lot of food. It's extreme hunger. And what happens is basically your body just is trying to use up all its energy, and then sometimes it just burns through all its energy so quickly that you get hungry and hungry and hungry again, because like I mentioned, your hunger cues aren't regulated yet, and it takes some time to regulate them. And the only way to regulate them hunger cues is to start eating, and eating regularly enough. And yes, you might eat a lot of food, and your child might eat a lot of food, and although you might be wondering like, oh my god, is my child binging? Is my child gonna get a binge eating disorder? No, okay? You just need to let your child have these recovery feasts. Don't call it binging, call it recovery feasting, or call it a response to famine or something like that, okay? Your child might go through these periods of eating loaves of breads, jars of peanut butters and things, and this is all just a response to your body. Your body kind of is so clever, and the body knows what it's doing, and the body will soon, after a while, will regulate. And although this child might be thinking that, oh my god, if I let myself eat whatever I want to eat, I'll eat so much food, but that just simply isn't the case, because in the early stages of recovery, the stomach capacity is actually shrunk. Which means that, imagine it like an elastic band that you need to snap inside of your stomach. So I imagine it like, when people get gastric band surgery to like shrink their stomach and things, your child has pretty much did that. But it's not forever. You have to snap that elastic band, and the only way to do that is to eat more food. So the more you eat, the more your stomach capacity will get back to normal, and then sooner or later your stomach capacity will be back to normal. And then when extreme hunger comes along, it may be to a point where you never feel full mentally or physically until you eat a lot of food. So your child may eat a lot of food before it feels mentally satisfied and physically satisfied. But the quicker your child eats all this food, and the quicker your child gets over these recovery feasts, then the quicker your child will get back to normal and have regular hunger cues. Another thing that I want to mention is that when the child is having these mental hunger cues, just reassure the child that this is completely normal. And this happens to so many people, and that, the only way to get rid of these hunger cues and things is to eat. the reason your child are having these huge recovery feasts is because of the child has stopped. So restriction is going to be the enemy, okay? Remind your child that. Just say that if you restrict again after having the recovery feasts, then you will just have another one and another one and another one, and then restrict, and that will be this incomplete cycle. Whereas if you have a recovery feast, you might have another one time, but then all of a sudden they will start to go down and you won't have them anymore. You just need to reassure your child doing that, because in those moments when the cortisol level, which is the stress hormone, starts to get released, the fear hormone, it will all of a sudden, your child's brain will start to become irrational, and all it will do is have the flight or fight response. So say you put a meal down to your child, they might fight you, they might shout at you, and that's not them. That is the cortisol hormone being released. Say when you're next to your greatest fear, if you're scared of spiders, and you get that instant of seeing a spider, that is what your child gets every time they see some food. So remember that is not your child doing that fight or flight response. You need to work with the child, remind your child of the logics behind it, because honestly that was one of the main things. When I educated myself on the logics of having an eating disorder and the response to feminine things, then I started to realize what I had to do. I realized that I had to eat a lot of food. And then over time you started to realize that, your body started to prove you're right. Like my hunger signals went down and I got regular hunger cues. My extreme hunger is no more. There's loads and loads of signs that you're able to use to help your child, think logically about the situations when they're in. And yes, they may cry and they may scream and they may shout at you, they may call you horrendous things, but at the end of the day, that sometimes it might have to be in your hands to make them eat them food and remind them you are still eating this food and you can eat while crying. Sometimes you have to have a really blunt response to them, because sometimes it's just not them. Sometimes it's eating disorder. But if you're watching this video, your child wants to recover. And your child 9 times out of 10 is probably showing you this video because they're literally crying out for help and they want to do this method and they're just scared of your reaction. So the next thing I want to talk about is, how do I get my child to recover? Like I mentioned earlier, you cannot force your child to recover. Of course, make sure that they eat enough food, but always over portion their food, because sometimes that they may want more food, but they don't want to ask for it. So say in the earliest stages of recovery, refeeding syndrome can come along, so you want to be careful. So refeeding syndrome have signs like shakiness and things like that, fatigue. There are lots of things. I'll also leave like NHS thingies. It's basically where your body goes from eating a really low amount of food to a high amount of food. So first of all, ask your child to be honest with them on how much they are eating. Okay, and if it is a really extremely low amount, like a 3-digit amount, then you want to be careful and maybe just up their calories enough, and then go into like all in, where I would say eating like 3,000 as a minimum calories a day, which might sound like a lot of food compared to meal plans and shit. But another thing I want to say is meal plans are restrictive. Your child will feel the need to stay in those meal plans, and those meal plans are not sustainable for life. And 9 times out of 10, a person gets to, a point where they are, classed as recovered kind of thing, weight-wise and things. But now you have to remember that anorexia is a mental illness, and the physical side of things is just a symptom. Yes, your child may wake up during physical restoration, but a lot of the time, it's all about in here. And you need to remember that just because your child might gain weight and just because your child may be at a healthy weight, it doesn't mean that they are recovered. It means that more than anything, they probably need more support, because they'll have to be battling with body image. They'll need to be battling with the new body, changing clothes sizes, things like that. And this is where your kind of guidance is needed and your kind of reassurance, because you know what, your child may come to you so many times asking for reassurance, asking the same things. Can I eat this? Can I do that? Or say they might say to you that, oh, I could just eat like an entire cake. Don't just be like, could you? Be like, go and do it. I'll bake a cake for you and eat the entire cake. You know what I mean? because 9 times out of 10 the things they say, we're crying out for help. We are just trying to find words to say it because our brain cannot pretty much function those words of I'm hungry, can you please get me some food? So always just offer things throughout the house, like maybe do a little sweet bowl in the middle of the table where your child may be able to just grab some sweets during the day. Like, do things like that, you know, are not as if you're like forcing feeding them, or that just so they have options, because when a person has the options to eat, they're more likely to eat, because it's so hard for a person in the early stages of recovery to just get up and get a slice of cake. It may seem like the easiest thing in the world to you. You might be able to go to the toilet like that easy and then get like a slice of cake kind of thing. But like what I'm trying to say is that for an eating disorder sufferer, it is the hardest thing that like you can even think of. Like there has been so many times in the past where I've got to the kitchen and I have just literally froze, or my mum's made me a meal one time and I have just literally stood in shock. So another thing I want to mention is let your child have some control. I know that the things like cabs that say block your child out the kitchen, don't let them see things and stuff like that, and for me this just didn't work. It made me feel like a baby, and although your child may be having to like have that kind of refeeding process like that, cross out any labels of calories that you're just not needed in your house. Take things out of boxes even if you need to. And then next thing is pretty much like let them cook some meals sometime, even if in the first stages it's with you, to make sure that they're doing everything right and make sure that they're like, you know, adding enough things in. Like just watch them and guide them on how to portion things, but you know, trust them. You know, a lot of people think that a person with eating disorder, they can't think rationally whatsoever, and that's simply not the case. Even at my lowest, I was still able to prepare all my meals. We're not irrational all the time. We're able to think things rationally. The difference is sometimes when we have them cortisol levels released, we just need a lot of reassurance and we just need a lot of guidance, because sometimes we can't bring ourselves to say the words like I'm hungry or I want this or I want that. So always just encourage your child to have something, and like even if you're just chilling and you're like, oh, do you fancy a biscuit? You know, just something like that. Because if your child is offered something, they probably want it. This is probably like, because everyone is different and everyone's on different stages and things. In the beginning, they may be so full and uncomfortable at times. They'll have things like bloating, water edema, which is where like your body starts to swell up. So they may think that they've gained loads of weight so quickly and they literally haven't. They may freak out because the stomach may be like collecting a lot of the tissue and things, and that's normal. A lot of the time, it takes time for weight to redistribute. So remind them in them moments and remind them how beautiful they are. Have self-care days. You know, tell them just to relax, like spend relaxing days, movies and things. Make sure they're not exercising, remind them that you don't need to exercise. Like loads of different things that you could just do to try and help them. And I know it's a lot easier said than done, because not everyone wants to recover. And I really hope that you're able to just let them see what life is like, you know, in recovery. Like show them that it's not all this bad stuff, it's not all the bloating and the constipation and shit like that. Show them, like even my Instagram for example, of people who has recovered as well, and just show them that there is life after eating disorders and that life is possible and that you just need to believe in it. And I actually went from last year to almost taking my life. From last year when I almost took my life to here where I'm working, I'm living my life, I'm not obsessed about food, I'm just really happy. I have a boyfriend. I am just living my life to the fullest now, and that is possible for every eating disorder sufferer out there. And just remind your child, as like whatever, your friend, that is possible, because it 100% is. So the next topic that we're going to talk about is your bit. How to support, what do you say and what do you not say. And this is kind of a hard one, because obviously you might not understand eating disorders, and you might not, or you might understand it so much more than your child even. So the first thing I want you to do is to research as much as possible on things like extreme hunger, things that CAMS kind of hide from you. 2, become confident that you can help your friend or child recover. Become confident. Don't just listen to, the first medical advice that you have, just send them away to inpatient or things like that. Try and just think, is this best for my child? Will this recover? Will this help my child recover? Or will this just be a temporary fix? Think things like that. Think long term. And don't give up what you want now for what you want in the moment. Don't give up what you want in the future for what you want in the moment, okay? So it might be easy to just say that, right? Like, I'll just let her skip this meal and then tomorrow we'll be back on the ball. Don't let that happen. As soon as she slips, as soon as the person, or he or she or whoever it is, starts to slip and miss a meal, then the eating disorder voice will just wake up. So make sure you're on the ball with them eating the minimums of free meals and free snacks. 2, like I mentioned, always encourage eating and cooking with you and things like that. But make sure that they eat their food. Things like, if they're baking, make a rule that if they're baking the food, they must also eat some of the food. Don't make comments about their weight or how much they've ate, okay? Even if it's comment like, you're looking so healthy, or like, you look a lot better, just remove any comments that you want to say about them, even if they are looking better and even if they are looking healthy and it's lovely to see them looking so healthy. You just have to move away from any comments, and you need to remember that, them comments can be twisted by the eating disorder brain. So you saying that you look so healthy, and the eating disorder brain, that can twist that, and that can be like, oh, they're noticing you've gained so much weight. Look, they already know. Because sometimes your brain is irrational to the point where your brain doesn't want healthy. Your brain doesn't think that healthy equals fat, and that's just simply not the case. So just remove any comments about that. Maybe try things like, you're looking so much happier. You know what I mean? You've got your laugh back. You've got your smile back. Things like that. Or like, your eyes have got the sparkle back. Just things like that. Just stay away from their body, okay? If they come to you talking about like they've outgrown their clothes and things like that, say it's fine, we can just sell them, or we can go to charity and drop them off, and then we can get new clothes. Obviously that's if you can afford that, of course. But just remind them that it's fine, it's normal, you know what I mean? It happens to everyone. It's like, it's just okay. Another thing that you can also do to support your child is, say the child is hungry and they're not voicing that they're hungry, then, sometimes just ask them, like, are you hungry? Like, literally just ask them, like, are you hungry? Do you fancy this? Same with like things like takeaway. Even if you think that, there's no possible way they'd say yes to that, just ask them. Because there's been times where I really wanted something like a takeout or whatever, and I was like, oh, I'm not gonna ask my parents that, and then my mom would be like, would you like this? And although she thought that, even though in the past I've said no to it like 100 times, this time I decided that if she asked me, I will say yes. And she asked me and I said yes. So obviously try to do little things like that as well if possible. So back to like what not to say about the don't comment on how much they're eating. Just don't do it. Like, just literally don't do it. Just act normal. Or if the child wants you to say well done, then say well done. It's just all down to the child and how they like it, but sometimes they just don't like to be noticed. What we need you to know, part 3. What we need you to know is that we're still in here. Although it might seem like your child has been possessed, or your friend might be possessed, and we might have outbursts and angry and tears, and although you shouldn't have to put up with that shit, we're sorry, and we feel so guilty sometimes, and hearing how awful we can be just makes us feel so riddled with guilt. And I want to remind you that this was not a choice. We didn't choose to have an eating disorder. We didn't ask for it. We didn't wish it upon us. We wouldn't wish it on our worst enemy, even. It's that bad. Eating disorders, people think that eating disorders, because we think we're fat, and that just simply isn't the case. Sometimes we hate how thin we are. We can see how thin we are. We don't always see ourselves as fat. For me, example, I saw how thin I was and I hated it. I hate being thin. But the difference is I felt it was out of my control, and I felt that I just felt lost. And this is where you have to come in and just reassure us that we're not lost, that you're in control, and that you can do this. You know what I mean? Like, this is just a bad time, and that you can get over this. And if you truly want to recover, then they will recover. And like, loads of people just have so many misconceptions. People don't think that you can have an eating disorder if you're a boy, and it's not the case. Boys have eating disorders. There's things as well like that. Everyone has body dysmorphia, everyone self-harms, everyone exercises, and it's not the case. Every individual person is different. And like I said, once again, it's the perfect opportunity for a person showing this video to voice their voice and just say what it's like having your eating disorder, you know, talk about it. Do things like, if you need things to, once they've ate and the child is struggling with guilt, help them with distractions. Obviously it's going to be so hard, but play mini games, read books, do things like write breakup letters to your eating disorder kind of thing. Although bacon is a really good way of, you know, being with a person and things, and they might enjoy bacon and things, sometimes it can be disordered. But as long as they're eating the food, then I would say go ahead and do bacon, because it's fun, and the child might be obsessed with food for a bit, and that's like kind of normal. It takes time for that mental hunger to go away. Try and limit them on things like social media recovery accounts. Make sure that the child is looking at good things like positive recovery accounts, not, because there are some really toxic recovery accounts out there, so just be aware that they are some like really pro anorexia sites and just dangerous sites, but there are some wonderful people out there as well in the recovery community. This might be a perfect opportunity for you as a parent to go and have a look on their Instagram and things, on Instagram itself, and just look at some recovery accounts and like maybe encourage your child to follow them or unfollow them. But yeah, you know best. You are a person who doesn't have an eating disorder, and you can help guide them of what normal eating is. Another thing, stay away from talking about diet culture. Turn off anything on the TV that's like how to lose weight well, shit like that. Like, just try and remove anything. Don't talk about calories to them, don't talk about fat to them, don't complain about your weight problems or how you feel fat or how bad a body image, because at the end of the day, we learn from that. We have an idea of what, you know, healthy eating is and what an ideal eating is. And if your child is looking up to this and seeing you, you know, bash your body and say how awful it is, then the person will learn from that, and the person will probably take that on board as well. So I know it may seem like a lot of responsibility for you to have, but just remember that, like, you are going to be our main support system, and we need you, and without you we probably won't recover. So just remember that although it's a lot of responsibility, just remember we love you, and that we promise it will be worth it, and I promise you it will be worth it, because your child will come back, your friend will come back. Just keep going with it. And you know, you need some me time too though, so remember you can't pour from an empty cup. So please don't just take on this responsibility alone. If you need help, please reach out for help as well. There are groups online on Facebook of parents with anorexia sufferers where you can talk among themselves and vent and things. Just don't take it all on board for you, because it can be really stressful as well for the people around you. So just remember that as well. Another thing we want you to know is that in the beginning, we probably won't want our 5 a day, or we probably won't want our really healthy meals all the time. We probably are going to be craving high fat, high sugar, high calorie foods, and remember that is okay. You know, we might devour the kitchens, we might eat full cakes, we might eat a lot of beige food or whatever. You just need to remind you that no food is good or bad in recovery, and that over time, yes, in the early stages, your child might crave lots of high fat, high sugar things, but it won't last forever. Your child will start to want to crave things such as fruit and vegetables. It definitely happened to me, and it will happen to your child as well. It just takes time, because obviously the body will want a lot of food and will want a lot of high fat, high sugar things to keep the energy up and stuff like that. A child may experience things like night sweats, and this is completely normal. It just means that the metabolism boosting up, and you might be like, but what happens if my child will just keep gaining on such a high amount of food? And that doesn't work like that. Your child's metabolism will speed up, so they may start eating like a really low amount of calories and they may gain really quickly at first, and this is normal. Your body holds on to the food because it's trying to repair tissue, because like your heart tissue is being damaged, your organ tissues have all been damaged, and it takes a lot of time for that to repair, so it pretty much stores a lot of food and you get water weight, so it might look like the weight goes up so quickly, and that just simply isn't the case. What actually is happening, your body is just storing the food, so then over time your metabolism will start to speed up, but the only way your metabolism will speed up is by eating a lot more food. Like I said, CAMS isn't always right, although it may seem like they're medical professionals. 9 times out of 10 they're not medical professionals in eating disorders, so just be aware of that as well. The CAMS for me wasn't helpful whatsoever. Being weighed every week just wasn't helpful. I don't weigh myself anymore but I do now know, because I go to the celiac clinic once a year, that I'm now a healthy weight and things, so that's all great. If you want to weigh your child, then please do, but I recommend a blind weigh-in so that you don't have to see, the child doesn't have to see the number or whatever. But yes, just remember that in time, that, you know, weight, everything doesn't revolve around that number. That number is just a tiny thing in this entire journey. At the end of the day, it's all about what's up in here and how to get this rewiring. So I hope this video helped anyone out there, any parents, any friends, any carer, and also the eating disorder sufferer. Please take this time to talk among yourselves and talk about what you want. Make a recovery plan even. Talk about things that you feel that you need to vent or whatever. But yes, thank you guys so much for watching this video, and I hope this helps, and good luck to you parents, good luck to you sufferers, and remember that this battle is against one single thing, so go ahead and fight that, and goodbye.